Yeah, he did.
Oh, well then.
Okay. All right. So again, welcome everybody. This is the Thursday, April 13th, 2023 Town of Monroe Planning Board Workshop Meeting. Noreen, would you please do the roll call attendance? Here?
Sorry. Bonnie Franson,
Here.
Jeff Manson,
Here.
Pat Shea,
Here.
Nick Napoli.
Here.
Dylan Penn is on his way.
All right. With that, I'll point out the fire exits. There are exits in front of me to the audiences to the rear of them. There's also the main entrance that everyone came in through, or most people came in through, and then there's another entrance back in that area. With that, could we please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag. All right, so first item on the agenda is continued public hearing for Homeland Towers Verizon at 2426 Strauss Lane, Monroe, New York. Good evening. If you just state your name for the record, and then you can start your presentation.
Good evening. My name is David Kenny. I'm an attorney with Snyder & Snyder, here tonight to represent the applicants Homeland Towers and Verizon Wireless.
And I'm Vincent Xavier, the regional manager for Homeland Towers. Oh, no? Okay. Do I need to go again? Okay, thank you.
So as we've discussed, this application is for a new wireless telecommunications facility located at Strauss Lane. We had at our last meeting discussed that the access drive was rerouted so that we could save some trees. There'll be 52 less trees to be removed by this new location and this new routing of the access drive. And the board had asked us to provide some additional simulations based on the more recent balloon test that was conducted. We have with you a photo simulation report that's called it should be the VRA with the March 30th date. The hard copies of this were supplied to the board in this application, but this is just the digital copy. Again, this is the kind of narrative supplement that goes with the balloon test, this letter of methodology, as well as where when the balloon test occurred, is where the viewpoints were located. What the board had asked us was one thing that we presented was the two different designs. We have at the very, very end, we have in a subsection D, the additional simulations that were asked of us by this board. They include the full build out of the monopole and the monopine, and they also include the kind of outline of the original site next to a simulation of the second location site. So this is the existing conditions. Let's pull it up. So this is this photo 4 on your first one for the exhibit D?
D2.
Okay, so yeah, D2 shows the monopole, if you can look up. Again, because of the distance, you actually have to zoom in to see it right there. So that's the monopole with one carrier, and you've already seen this simulation before. The next slide is a monopole with 4 carriers. So this would be if there was a max co-location on here. Again, this would be, you have the 4th carrier right at the tree line and 3 above. Verizon, again, of course, is the top carrier, but this would be, if there was a co-location, this would be what a max build-out monopole would look like. The next simulation is a simulation that shows the revised location, or this second location that we've now been proposing, versus an outline of the original location, to kind of give you an example of like where the difference in this location is compared to the prior location that was reviewed and studied. So So what we notice here, if you just zoom in a bit, it's a little bit to the left, but I think more importantly, it's a little bit shorter than the top of that tower, and that's because it's a little further away in the direction that we're looking, so that because it's a little further away, it seems to be a little bit shorter just because of the added distance that you're looking at it. The next slide is our monopine at the same location. And again, we're doing all of these zoom ins right now, but it's important to know that the real view is more if you take the photo that we have, really an 11 by 17 print and hold it at arm's length, that should really mimic what the natural observer is going to see. This is a one carrier monopine. It still has all of the branches that would conceal all of the antennas. The next slide would be if we had 4 carriers on the monopine. Now, with the faux branches, there shouldn't be much of a difference noticeable here because, again, the goal of the monopine is we're concealing the antennas within the faux branches and making it continue to look like a stealth tree or this tree design. It seems a little bit fuller. That would be the only thing, is because there's more stuff there, so it's a little bit more opaque. But it's essentially the same outline. It's the same exact design. And then the next slide we have is a same thing. It's a photo of the current proposed location and the prior reviewed location. And again, the same thing. The tower for the original location is just a little bit above the revised location. That's because the original location was a little bit more in the foreground, a little closer to the observer that took this photo, so it would appear a little bit taller than this revised location. And then we have, after this, these are the leaf-on photos we included as well. And again, these show with leaf-on, the first one is the existing conditions, and then we have the second one will be the one carrier monopole. It's there to the left. Again, with this distance, it becomes a little bit invisible. But that's the one carrier monopole, and then the next slide would be a 4 carrier monopole. And this, again, is the same set of slides that we just went through, but these are in the leaf-on conditions, just to give you that different view, that different condition. And this is the 4 carrier monopole, again, in the leaf-on conditions. And then the next slides, we had previously had some public comments from members of the public who thought that they could be able to see the tower. We since, as part of the second balloon float, met with the Furbecks who were commenting about being able to possibly see the tower from their property in 8 Orchard. It's been confirmed that they can't see the tower. We met with them during the second balloon test. I believe they came here at the last planning board meeting and commented to the same. But these, again, just for the benefit, they have additional line of sight drawings for both the Furbecks property, which is 8 Orchard, and then at our first public hearing, we did have a commenter that lived at 19 Old Quaker and also Old 13 Old Quaker. We did line of sight drawings for her benefit to also demonstrate that you won't be able to see the tower from based on the topography and the tree cover that's intervening.
Thank you for that.
At this point, we'd like to hear, I guess, some feedback from the board. Again, our goal here is we're before the zoning board as well as the planning board. The zoning board can't act on its application until SECRA has been completed. And so we're here tonight to hopefully discuss and get into a position where the board feels comfortable to choosing between one of these design options, and then potentially, hopefully at the next meeting next week, take an action on SECRA so that the zoning board can act on its application.
So with that, I'm going to direct to our consultants, see if they have any comments that they want to raise.
So I reviewed the revised plans. Obviously, they're updated to reflect the new location of the tower and the compound and the revised road. I'm not sure if the Monroe Conservation Commission has had a chance to look at that to confirm that that was more or less what they're thinking.
Well, we haven't received comments from them yet.
Okay. So I'd suggest that. Revised plan?
Did they receive it?
My mic is on. He was down in the office.
I think you just have to bring it closer.
And I gave him plans, I believe they were yours and somebody else's. He walked out with a whole bunch of stuff. But I haven't heard back from him since then. I will check with Dennis tomorrow.
That'd be good.
But we
No
would
news
point
is
out,
no news.
we would point out that the site visit was conducted with the Environmental Commission, and that these changes were actually done during the site walk with them. So it was kind of, we made our changes based on the comments we received from them at the site walk, but we still hope to have a confirmation from them or written comments if they have any.
Great.
Next, with regards to the SWIP, the last layout was around 0.95 acres of disturbance, whereas this has been reduced to 0.8, so that confirms that a SWIP will not be required based on the amount of disturbance. Had a couple minor technical cleanup items on the plan. I think one of the big discussions tonight, kind of started discussing, would be the monopine versus the monopole. And just a reminder to that effect, Cityscapes had suggested basically a note on the plans to the effect, or a condition of approval, or both, with regards to how if the monopine was chosen, how that would look, and where the branches would be and where they would start. We've discussed the visual analysis that was prepared, and then just with regards to the lighting, I didn't see on the elevations where the lights were proposed on the plan. They're noted to be with dial timers whenever they come on, but not sure if they're going to be like on a timer or actually, motion sensor timer, or if they're going to be like on between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. or whatever it is.
So it's definitely not that. When we speak about a timer, it's usually like a dial switch, so that if the engineer's working at the site and they can turn the switch, by the time they leave, it'll shut off within 60 minutes or whatever. That way they're not walking in the dark to their car or whatever.
Gotcha. Yep, understood.
So I saw, Sean, also in the comments, it said the color of the vinyl coated
yes.
fence to be determined. So, I think typically we use black to minimize visibility. So my suggestion would be black, but I don't know if anyone feels strongly about a different color, green or brown, but I tend toward the black color.
In our plans, what we noted is that the colors to be determined by the town. So from our standpoint, we'll paint it
Right.
whatever color you want.
Any thoughts?
Monopine is my vote.
Oh, we're talking about the fence first.
Oh, I'm so
The
sorry.
vinyl coated fence. So I have found that with the fencing, I like the black because I think you just don't see it as much.
I would agree.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. Pat? All right, so we'll go with black vinyl coated. So now monopole.
Just
Actually,
to lead the discussion, right
Yeah.
now, it's on the plan as a monopole, and all components will be brown, is how it's
Okay.
shown on the detail.
okay.
Correct. So
Is it light brown or darker brown?
it can be whatever color brown this board chooses. Again,
But did you have a swatch of it in what you,
no, we did not.
provided? Okay.
We can provide one, or go ahead.
Yeah, if that's something that's important tonight, I actually have a paint sample showing the Thunder Gray or the Pine Cone Brown in my car on an actual piece of steel I can go get.
okay.
wanna-
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
But I just want to real quickly also, I think we'll take Ashley's comments, and then I wanted to see if anyone was here from the public. So if you wanted,
Yeah.
yeah, and then we'll go turn back to this. Ashley, did you have any comments?
A few. I think I had raised some of them, so I could follow up with David and email some things about the tree plan to just bring that, to add a little more information on there per the code. don't know that the town adopted the new.
Yeah, I'm not aware of it having been adopted yet.
It's still in public hearing. It's on the next meeting's agenda, so my assumption is they're still working on that.
Well, absolutely, if it's adopted, amend our plans to meet the new code. But yeah, we can add those details. The reason we refrained from doing that again was because whether or not the trees are being removed was dependent on the location
Right.
and then the rerouting of the access drive. So I guess tonight we're also, I think it's been kind of discussed that this newer location is the one that's preferred, but we would also ask that that be determined tonight as well.
Right. I would only, just a quick question, that's a revision to the zoning, the tree regulations? So has that been referred to us? I don't recall getting the tree regulation revisions, which I think have to be referred to us before the town board can take action. So maybe if you could send a note to the supervisor or the clerk, just to find out where they are in the process and if they intend to refer to us. Thank you. Did you have other comments, Ashley?
The other thing is you are in the Ridge Preservation Overlay, so you do have those regulations. Back in November, the applicant had submitted a narrative addressing those elements. A couple of things needed. They were requesting a waiver top of the structure not being located below the ridgeline and not fully screened by existing vegetation, and also structure skyline, a sea.
So that's why they're in front of the ZBA in part,
They're in front of the ZB
because they need a use
for
variance.
use variance, the
Yeah,
waivers from the RPO or something that this board.
the planning board has to do. Okay.
So they're really related to the visual. So I think the first step is figuring out the location, and then you could assess, based on that, what waivers and whether you agree with their analysis of the other RPO elements.
Only one minor thing is we do have the shot clock. It's been extended to the next meeting at the 18th.
Right.
So we can tonight discuss extending it, or we can leave that to the 18th, but obviously, just as a procedural matter, we'll need to extend that to provide additional time.
Discuss that
So
decision and then authorize me to sign.
Okay.
I don't know if you have an, and that might be because the shot clock, it does cover board and also the,
Right. Since this is a public hearing, is there anyone in the public that would like to offer comments on the proposed cell tower? So it doesn't appear that there are, so I think we can kind of dive into this discussion of monopine, monopole. I also want to talk a little still about height. Right now, it's designed for 4 carriers, up to 4. My question is, because we don't have a telecommunications law, so co-location is usually a requirement of many municipal codes. It's not that it's an FCC requirement, or is it an FCC requirement?
So there's a federal law that sets a certain parameters that limits a local or state government's review over certain co-location requests that are called eligible facilities requests.
Okay.
So very often certain towns that have wireless laws will require co-location because that helps eliminate the proliferation of towers and unnecessary one-off towers.
Right.
But as an eligible facilities request, basically the applicant would make a filing with the jurisdiction that says, we are submitting this application as an eligible facilities request because we meet these 6 objective parameters that determine that this is not a substantial change to the existing structure. So that would be basically the application that would be received that is called an eligible facilities request. It's up to the town on how they review it. There are certain requirements about what kind of documentation can be requested. There are requirements about how fast that application has to be processed. but it's still an application that needs to be reviewed and processed by a jurisdiction and someone to confirm that it actually is an eligible facilities request. Because if it's not an eligible facilities request, then you're allowed to impose your own zoning jurisdiction and your own law.
So where I was going with this is that if this is being constructed and you're at the highest point on the tower, as the co-applicant, Verizon, if you went to 3 instead of 4, and I think we talked about this a little before, could that pole be reduced by 10 feet? And now we would be taking on the risk, theoretically, of another provider wanting to go on the pole, but could we go 10 feet lower, have 3 on the pole, and would that still provide the coverage?
So the short answer is no. So basically, Verizon's need for its height is what's dictating the top height of this tower right now. The way it's been designed for 3 or 4 carriers, we're talking about structural capacity to support the weight. It's not that we know that these certain rad center heights or these lower heights will work. We're essentially doing a very educated guessing. We're in the industry, we know that more likely than not it will work at the 10 foot below and the 10 foot below, but until we have that carrier's network information, it's all speculation at this point. We feel very confident you'll get a second or third carrier there, but there's no way to guarantee that, and there's also no way to guarantee that they wouldn't come here and have a need for additional height. We're here now with Verizon's application and Verizon's statement, which has been confirmed by Cityscape, your consultant, is that this height that we're proposing now is the minimum height necessary. If you may recall from past meetings, we showed you kind of the line.
I don't remember
exactly.
that, whether did we actually evaluate it at, let's say, 10 feet lower?
So we did, and
Okay.
we showed that with the 10 foot lower, then we're starting to more and more touch the tops of the trees and attenuate the signal, because it's a wavelength, so it doesn't move just in a straight line, it kind of moves like that. So you're having more of the valleys get attenuated signal, and Cityscape also confirmed that that was accurate, that we did do a demonstration of minimum height. So this has been something that's been reviewed by this board, and I think it was confirmed that we are the minimum height necessary.
If that's the case, then that's going to be true of any potential further carriers. If you can't go 10 feet lower, then, and the signal starting to be attenuated, it seems it would be the same case with any other co-locations.
It's not necessarily true because, again, what we're doing for Verizon's network is it's stating for us to be able to get this signal strength to the areas that we know that we need this signal, and also, again, to connect to the other surrounding sites that we need to offload capacity from, we know that we need this general footprint, so to speak. Another carrier may need a lesser footprint, may need a smaller footprint. And again, the thought is also that Verizon's coming in with a brand new facility, a brand new tower. So with the capital that's being invested, they want to make sure that they're 100% filling their need with this facility. Another carrier may come along and say, we'll take 80% of our need being filled because we don't have to build a new tower. We can just co-locate on here. And you see that quite often. It's almost one of the things where if you build it, they will come.
Can I also assume that since each of the carriers operate on different frequencies that they've been assigned by the FCC, that has an effect on the height that's needed as well? Because if their particularly high frequency is a considerably shorter wavelength than Verizon's, they won't necessarily have that clipping in the valleys of the attenuation.
Absolutely, and also it's their signal strength.
Right.
There's different frequencies we have for Verizon on this tower, and exactly, there's different frequencies for T-Mobile, different frequencies for AT&T, and they all have varying levels of signal strength. Some are a little bit more powerful and can reach further distances than others. Some are higher capacity and can handle more data than others, but just don't go as far as distance.
There are variations amongst the carriers in the technology that they use for this as well?
Absolutely.
If I understand correctly? Okay.
Absolutely. Most of them are going into, sure everybody's heard of 5G, but within that, there's so many different sub-technologies of what actually is 5G, and each one of them is different. In fact, it's proprietary, and also they're buying certain licenses for that particular spectrum. So that's where the FCC is regulating who is a national carrier or not. It's who gets that license to operate that spectrum in this country.
Yeah, the purpose for my questions is just simply I'm trying to figure out what any other alternative to reduce the height in any possible way, because it is still sticking up. And at this point, I'm back and forth in terms of whether it should be monopole or monopine, because they're just very different. And if the tree if it was a little lower, I would say definitely, but it still sticks out enough that I'm not sure. And so I want to get a sense again whether there's any way to get it lower.
Totally understand. I think we've coming in at the lowest height possible. Normally, these towers are closer to 150 feet, so we came in knowing we're on a ridge line, we're in a sensitive area, we want to do the minimum height. But also, I think your focus right now is maybe the memory of this round lake kind of view where we do seem to be sticking up. I'd ask you to look at some of these other views from other vantage points where we're barely sticking above the tree line. I think because of the topography in the area and the vegetation, the minimum height from certain areas may seem like we're above the tree line, well above it. In some other areas, it looks like you can't even see us above the tree line. So I think we really are at that minimum height, and while one viewpoint may seem like we're sticking up more, the vast majority of the viewpoints, we're barely above the treetops. And I think in particular, we have the Cromwell condominiums. That is actually a condominium where we had a member of the public complain about the lack of cell service.
Right.
And that's one where we're just above the tree line, and I'd be concerned any lower whether or not we're getting her the service that she's asking for.
Yeah, I was just because that particular vantage point is probably one of the ones that is the most highly visible and viewed because of it being a main arterial. Lakes is, much more traveled than many other locations from which it would be visible. So while I appreciate, we don't really want it being visible from many areas at all, that one happens to be a higher traveled road and is going to be visible, so that's the one I focus on.
No, absolutely, and I think it's a good point to focus. It's a lake, it's an area of an aesthetic resources, but again, lowering the height to make it less visible from that site may reduce the quality of the service because it's now well below the tree line from most of the other vantage points.
So I think with that, I'll start on this side with Pat. Pat, any thoughts on monopole versus monopine? Any additional information you think you need? And actually, since you went through the trouble of bringing the colors in.
Before we decide, let's let Vincent.
These are really the colors we use for the monopine design. He's gonna get that. So these are the colors we generally use for the monopine design. All of the ones I've done have actually been the top one, the Thunder Gray. And it seems a little counterintuitive, but really when you go out and look at trees, they're not very brown. So generally we recommend the Thunder Gray. Antenna, painting the antennas like a dark green. And then, I'm still, sorry, not used to this. Painting the antennas green and then wrapping them with these socks or needles we find is the best approach. If you were going to go with a monopole design, it really does open up the amount of colors you can do. We've done it where the bottom is like a light brown and the top is like a sky blue. You could do the whole thing sky blue. It really depends on the vantage point you're trying to screen it from. Obviously if there's a bunch of trees in the background, you would go with a darker color. If you're trying to protect Round Lake's view, then maybe you just want to do a sky blue as a monopole. But generally these are the two. This is actually a piece of steel from a tower, so it kind of gives you a good look of what it is. But we think the Thunder Gray is best, but if you didn't like that brown, you wanted a different brown, we can do anything, any color really. This is just Sherwin-Williams paint, so any color.
Not on the mic.
The red light has to come, this little red light has to come on if you're speaking into the, there you go.
Okay. So consistently I've said that I want the monopine, and I would like the Thunder Gray. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other side. We'll be the Oreo. Cream in the middle.
I mean, as I've always said, I let my wife pick the colors. So I'm going to go with majority here. So I'm I'm gonna let you guys decide.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then as far as monopole versus monopine?
I don't know. I see the perk of the pole. I see the perk of the pole because it's going to be hidden when we're in season and everything. All the trees have, leaves, and then when everything sticks, it's just going to look like a stick if it's brown up there. But I also see that it blends in very well when we are, in season. So I don't know. I'm kind of like torn between the two. How about you?
I'm going to ask Jeff now what he thinks, and then I may actually ask our alts if they have an opinion too.
So I have a question before I render an opinion. In the renderings that showed the 4 carriers on the pole, that was still showing the pole at the top height of 100 feet, but because of this requirement that they can make this existing facilities request, there is the ability for that to include an increase in height on the tower as well.
Correct.
Okay. So although, like when we're looking at the 2 locations, and especially with the co-locations, and it looks a little smaller, in the end, if there are 4 co-locations, it could be higher than it is.
It could. At
Okay.
this point in time, it's pure
Right.
speculation.
I understand that. But my other question in relation to that is, so assuming you have the tower, Verizon is now up there and set, is it merely a factor of now other carriers, as they're looking to expand their network in this area, may realize that that tower is there and make a co-location request? Or is it more standard in the industry that once a tower is built and up and running, that you market that to the other carriers? It's not a bad answer here. I'm just curious how that works in the industry.
No, that's good. So obviously I'm with Homeland Towers. I don't represent Verizon.
Right.
So my goal is to build a structure that is co-locatable, that will work for additional carriers as well. So yes, what we do is once it's up, or even beforehand, we'll market it, and we want to get the carriers on there. And obviously that's in everybody's best interest. These towers really don't make money until you have more than one carrier on them, and even that's long term. So we want to incentivize that, and also it's in the best interest of the community because a carrier like
you want it with
Verizon-
fewer towers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Minimize the proliferation. Another carrier may come in, and I've been in this situation where I've actually taken over sites that a carrier started, and they'll put their tower up for just what they need, designed it structurally for what they need, and have a very small fenced compound that fits just their equipment. And I'm like, that's fine for them, and when they come in with the application, it looks good because it's a smaller footprint. But coming in as a developer, seeking to have this tower work to be like the tower for the community so you don't have proliferation, that's why we designed the compound so big, and we do market it. It's in our interest to do that and to get the carriers to co-locate on it.
Look, it's my opinion that it's more efficient, and I agree that it's better for the community if we have fewer towers rather than more. So I've given this quite a bit of thought, and I've done a lot of looking around at different options. One of the most visible pieces that we're experiencing here locally is the tower on Bald Hill. And while I agree that Lakes Road is a heavily traveled road, it's not more heavily traveled than 17M. And the tower on Bald Hill is more visible than I believe this tower will be, even at possibly a larger height if it wound up being that. With that in mind, and that's a monopole design, by and large, for most of it, it's fairly invisible. And not because it's one or the other, but frankly, it's like telephone poles and light posts and other infrastructural type things, particularly utility things. We drive past substations all the time and we don't even think about it. I have high tension wires running over the end of my street, and I notice those towers almost never. And I think that we've all kind of gotten used to the fact that to have the society we have, there's some structure that goes along with that. That being said, and I was taking a look at an old monopine design on Route 17 in Jersey when I was down in like Ramsey or Paramus, if you know the one I'm talking about. It's hardly that, and it's certainly not what we're looking at. And while I'd be curious to see if we were doing the monopine, what that would look like in this situation, what you'd actually be proposing, I'm of the opinion that monopine is preferable because I do expect that there'll be co-locations, and I feel like once we've established it, there's going to be very little change. And that's part of what will help that kind of fade into the background for people. So as you're driving past the dock on Lakes Road and you look over out at the lake, that consistency of that look, no matter whether you have one carrier or four, it makes more sense to me.
Yeah, what's key?
Sorry, you said monopole or monopine?
I'm in favor of monopine.
Monopine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's key with that, and I know we've dealt with this in other jurisdictions here, and just to go back actually to talk about the older towers, they used to actually put all the branches where, at 8 feet low is all the branches, and then at 10 feet is all. Now they stagger them so it wraps around, so it looks a little more real. The quality of the branches is better and they look better. We would provide branch details that can be approved during the building permit process to show exactly what the heights at each level would be. I think the key really, if you want to have this look good long term, is really focusing on the mounts as well, to have any clause in an approval or any condition of an approval. Ensure that there's a specific wording that says, the mount shall not exceed the length of the branches. It's things like that, and making sure that the paint color is in your code, so that, if I'm not doing this 15 years from now, another company owns something or something, they still have to abide by this, and it'll give your inspectors and things, something to issue violations on, or to really help maintain the quality of this pole. I think when municipalities don't do that, they're kind of hurting themselves long term. So having those things really to protect the look of the monopine is crucial.
I just find that the monopole look, and really looking at the one on Bald Hill again, which I think is the most prevalent one locally, it just looks very technological to me. And if we can minimize that, I think it's in keeping with the comprehensive plan. I think it's in keeping with some of our goals here. So again, that's my preference, is the monopine.
It's very subjective, it could go
Yeah.
either way,
Right.
Some
Yeah.
people like the idea that you're seeing this technological thing there that's protecting the community, Other people prefer the tree. We don't have a preference either way, Frankly speaking, the tree costs me almost double what a regular pole does, but regardless, obviously, we presented that. Long term, the monopine itself, you're gonna have some needles fall off, and it is gonna need maintenance. And during any modifications to the tower, you're gonna wanna make sure that those things are considered and looked at. But if you have the resolution written well and with those conditions in it, and there's certifications that occur, you can make them continue to look good over time.
Do Bob or Louis, do you have any thoughts on monopine versus monopole since you're here? I'm just curious.
Personally, I don't have a preference.
Okay.
Matter. I mean, it's just a whole. I think the people of Monroe need service. So whether it's a monopine or monopole, doesn't matter.
Okay. No. Okay.
I'm going to change my answer to pine. I forgot about that aspect. You're going to have co-carriers, so it's going to look like a monster if you do the pole. Might as well cover it with the shrubs, and I don't know. To me, it's lesser of both evils.
Okay.
And just to bring up, we did meet with the zoning board at the last meeting. They were same kind of what we're hearing. They were torn between the two. They felt that there was benefits to both, and so they kind of just said they were framed, but they were kind of okay with both designs. And then, just as Vincent said, there's some comments, right? We've been talking about whether or not there was a speculative future co-location. There may be some benefit with the monopine. You have an added layer of review over that co-location application. There's a requirement that they can't defeat the stealth design that you would be approving. And just as some numbers, it's a little bit more expensive to extend a monopine than a monopole.
So from my perspective, when I look at Bald Hill, I think it's horrific. I think it's a terrible looking, horrible telecommunication tower. Having said that, there's sometimes you just can't screen something when it's so obviously taller than the trees below. And I think that whether it was going to be just a plain monopole or a monopine, it would have been obvious. I think here there at least is a little bit more of a relationship to the top of the ridge and the tree heights. And I think especially the point that you had made that it's going to be viewed from a variety of vantage points. You know, obviously the one that's the most impacted is Lakes Road, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be visible from other locations. And from other locations, it would certainly be better, from my perspective, to have a monopine versus a monopole. So you have, you know, definitely four here for the pine. And I think we can focus on then the specifics and the details as far as, because I know you said there were slightly different shapes, slightly different branching, slightly different color, but where we're trying to get is to seeker. And so I think the important thing is to specify that it is going to be stealth technology, that it will be monopine, and that will, you know, work on the colors as part of the approval process itself.
Absolutely. I think for the purposes of the neg deck, you just need to have taken your hard look. And I think
Right.
this board has done more than enough for a hard look. I think what we're looking for next Tuesday is if exactly that. You could take your action on SECRA regarding the design of the tower and allow us to proceed with the Zoning Board of Appeals. Of course, when we come back to this board, we're going to have to update our site plans in response to some of the comments we received tonight, but we'll also add the detail in there for the monopine. What Vincent was stating before is that we have these actual specific like cell tree design drawings where they actually say exactly where the branches are going to be located, the heights, the spacing, the length of the branches, so we can have all of that added into our next mission.
Okay.
I actually have a sample board that was actually just sent to my office, and I can get it today. There's 3 different like types of needles that you can pick from too, you know, and one of the ones we most recently picked, and one of the ones we usually do, it's a blend of like greens and browns, but once we get into the colors, I can bring in that board, and you can even pick the needle type.
Did you guys work on the Nelsonville one we've talked about? Did that get installed?
We're still in litigation on that one.
Okay. I thought that ended already.
Oh, I wish. I wish.
So I'm not going to say anything further because I was involved in the review, so.
Yeah.
But I was curious whether they had finally, because they had made some concessions as far as design, height, et cetera, so I wasn't sure if it got built. Because I was curious to see what that one ultimately ended up looking like.
It will
Okay.
be built.
Okay.
It will be built. You know,
Eventually.
It's a
So,
electrical conduit question at this point only, so.
got it. So is there anything, so I think we can proceed with writing a neg deck. Is there anything we need to cover as far as the neg deck beyond? I think the visual in particular was important. You've minimized impacts to trees as we had requested. You know, anything like Indiana bat, northern long-eared bat, if that's an issue, that's just the tree cutting
we'll-
time period,
Yeah,
et cetera.
exactly. We'll abide by the tree cutting restriction.
Anything we need to,
Other thing would, I had mentioned,
Yeah.
RPO, because that goes to consistency with your land use regulations.
okay. So should we do a resolution to acknowledge that we're waiving, or should we do that actually maybe next week so we have a full list of the waivers? Or do we know what they are? Or do you want me to bring it up?
Bring up their November 22nd. I believe there was a memo.
November 22nd? Oh, I may not have it. I may not have moved it over. That was my issue with my computer. That was my hacking, so there's certain files that I still have to pull off of my.
I have a copy tonight, but we're more than happy to wait till Tuesday if that would be a benefit to the board to have it written down and a resolution prepared for Tuesday.
Yeah, let's do that. Is that okay? Or did you want it to be like a verbal resolution?
That's fine.
Yep. Well, let me bring up the law.
Just email.
You emailed it to the MPV or the? Yeah, that's the one that's up right now. Sometimes Outlook works and sometimes it doesn't work so quickly.
Technology is always fun.
Yeah. I love how I say stay signed in and it never does.
It's a tease.
It is a tease. All right, I may have it here, Ashley. I was able to bring this up. Oh, it hasn't come through yet. The other email? There we go. I came quicker to that one.
On page
So page 4, we go through the different design standards and the regulations for the RPO, and we outlay in bold each of the code requirements, and then directly beneath that, that's our kind of response to that code requirement. With the first one, I think it's that may require that activities and structures be located in portions of lot outside the ridgeline regulated area. So when here we noted that it's permissive may, so from our standpoint, there wasn't a need for any waiver request, but to the extent that this board feels that one should be granted or is needed to be granted, we respectfully request one. And then if you go to subsection 5, I believe is the next waiver request. That's the requirement for that the tower or any structure be located below the ridge line. Obviously, with this type of technology, we need to be at the height that we're at. So we've asked for a waiver of this, but we've also submitted that it is the minimum height necessary. So from a federal standpoint, we need this height.
In addition, ridgeline, the waiver would also need to be a requirement that in no instance shall a structure pierce the skyline as seen from any public road.
Right.
Yeah, the waiver should be for that whole section right there.
Whether there's any
And those were really the only two, my understanding, was the location outside of the ridge line and then the piercing or the, exceeding the treetops for the ridge line.
Number 5 in your memo.
Number 5 is really the only one. Again, our comment for number 1 was that the planning board, in its discretion, may require that activities and structures be located on those portions of a lot outside the ridgeline regulated area. Because of the use of the permissive may, we're saying that no waiver is required, but to the extent that you feel one needs to be issued, we respectfully request one.
Yeah, I think just to be safe, I'd rather do the waiver so that there's no doubt. So I think that, we've been through this process. I think we all worked very hard to come up with a solution that, given the realities that there's going to be one-sided there, that we minimize the impacts by, slightly shifting it, which did benefit a little bit as far as going down the hillside, getting it a little farther away to the west, using the monopine. So I think given, and again, even relocating the driveways driveway to be able to cut down on tree clearing, which is still also a part of the ridge line, obviously. I think that's all been beneficial. And I think we've gone probably as far as we can. So I would recommend that the planning board grant a waiver from the RPO design standards as it relates to locating the structures outside of the ridgeline regulated area, as well as not piercing the skyline, et cetera, as it relates to that item number 5. Would someone please make a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Noreen?
Napoli,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Pat Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, the waivers are granted. And then, should we discuss the shot clock?
So we would suggest a date of June 1st. I think that gives us enough time, another 2 months, so to speak, to get it, or a month and a
it'll
half.
have to be always to a meeting night.
Okay.
Right. So we'd have to go to probably our Tuesday in June.
So that'd be June,
20th.
so,
That's the fourth Tuesday, so June 20th.
so June 20th,
Yeah. Sorry, third Tuesday.
still June 20th.
That would be the
Yeah, still June
ZBA.
20th. I'm on the right date.
But yes, we would respectfully extend the shot clock to June 20th upon consent of this board and the zoning board.
Clock to
Oh, yes.
authorize the planning board attorney to sign the letter agreement to the same.
So I'll make a motion to that effect, that we're going to extend the time frame within which to make a decision to June 20th, 2023, and that we are authorizing our attorney to sign a letter to that effect. May I have a second?
Second.
Wow, that was everybody.
I got Nick, I don't know who the other was.
Okay, so Nick, you beat
Okay.
everybody out.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Nick Napoli.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, and then I guess on our agenda for Tuesday, then we're going to consider a neg deck so that they can then go, is that enough time, Ashley? Because I wasn't sure, I just want to see timeframes, whether it works, since we're going to be putting something
Yeah,
together.
I could aim to do that, and I think it's really just the one piece that you.
Is there any benefit to them attempting a draft and then sending it to you, if there's a template? It's up to you. I'll leave it up to you.
Our resolutions tend to get long, so whatever we can do to help you.
If you'd like, we have a few templates, just feel free to
If you
reach
want
out.
to send something,
Sure, absolutely.
but if you could send it.
Absolutely, we'll get it to you tomorrow morning.
So we will endeavor to do a neg deck on Tuesday, but if for whatever reason it's too tight, so we'll see what we can do. Acknowledging it's
So we do agree that, all you can do is endeavor and hope to, but just as a point, we do have a public hearing with the zoning board
Well,
scheduled for April 25th.
that's why I'm trying to.
Yeah, so if there's anything we can do to help, we really would hope that there would be an opportunity to act on it at the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying, because I knew that they were coming up for the
Yeah,
ZBA.
they have their public hearing. We're missing a letter.
Okay,
Any day now, right?
all right, anything else we need to address this evening? I think then you'll be readjusting your plans to reflect the mono pine. And then if you can, again, color swatches, examples of those that have been installed, just whatever you can give us as information so that we can make right decisions as far as what's best for that
Absolutely.
design.
And I think we're hearing, monopine, thunder gray, so we'll focus on those options that we have within that range of design and make sure that the board is comfortable with whatever it chooses.
Sounds good. Thank you. I don't know why they call it thunder gray, but looks brown in my eye.
Listen, you're Sherwin-Williams, you got to name 7,000 colors, just come up with things.
Painted one moon mist, so I don't know if you like that color.
Moon mist. Send it to us just so we can see what moon
Sure.
mist looks like.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, let me give you your.
What?
All right, next item on the agenda is Pilati Village, Harriman Heights Road. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, Michael Morganti, I'm the engineer for this application. It's before the planning board.
So I believe this evening, The objective is to work through recommendations. It's been forwarded to us, the proposed CCR zone for this particular property, and we have to develop recommendations and then put them together, and I think we would consider them for next Tuesday's meeting, correct? Yeah. So should I bring the CCR objectives up? Yeah. Is there anything we need to discuss as far as the site plan first, or?
No, there hasn't been a new one submitted, and as you recall, last meeting, you had adopted the neg deck.
Section is CR
At the end.
at the end. Oh, did they add a new article? Oh. So is it 2, 3? Where should we focus first? Sub.
I believe it is. But just the general requirement is for you to,
Oh, here we go. So this C?
yes, B5 explains what the referral is asking you to do. And then the criteria are in sub C. So it's going to be recommending approval with modifications, or denial, and to give recommendations on how it can be improved in order to incorporate best practices of sustainable land development. Any comments on the layout or design, those types of things?
Okay, so ultimately, that report is recommend, whether it's approved with modifications, or denied. Okay, so criteria. Well, it meets 1. And it meets 2. It will be served by central water and sewer,
Correct.
which has to be approved by the town board. Percent of MDP, you're meeting the 65%.
Yes.
A lot of that area is constrained by wetlands. I don't know that it's the portion of the site furthest from the village boundaries. I think the one side is, the other is just because, so I don't know that you're meeting the 65% farthest away from the village, because I think part of the open space are the wetlands that are on the Mansion Ridge side.
So I had originally I had calculated the open space for the parcels being separate, and
Okay.
we met the open space for both. And then I was requested to take a look at adding both sites together to see what the open space criteria is, and we met it that way also.
Okay. Well, I think we have to treat it all as, because it's one application. So in as much as, so it may have met it on both sides of the street, but it's for the entire project. I'm just saying that I think the wetlands on the townhouse side, or the recreation, that is closer to the village than the other side. But I think it's the nature of using the site where it's already been disturbed, and
Correct.
yeah. So while we don't entirely meet, let's say, that standard, it does make sense still.
Well, and the way I'm reading that section of the code is, that is prioritized as follows. So those areas that are most constrained by sensitive environmental resources, which would include the wetlands, so it would make sense that that's a higher priority than it be the portion of the site furthest from existing village boundaries, although I certainly understand the logic of that. And the wetlands probably also fit into B, areas of high conservation value, comparatively speaking to.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't know that this was set up as a hierarchy. I think probably all of them are prioritized, but I absolutely do agree that there's 4 there.
Right.
And so they may meet, 2 of the 4. Obviously, D isn't relevant because it's not used for agriculture.
Bonnie, can I ask one question? Is it possible for you to zoom in on the text a
More?
little bit so I can read it because I can't quite see it
Sure,
from here as
sure.
well?
Does that help?
Maybe one more? That's fine, now I can see it, thank
I'm
you.
trying to see if there's a way I can minimize, oh, geez Louise. I can minimize the screen. F11?
Take out your top bar. We'll hide that.
F11? There you go, thank you.
Welcome. Is that what you were thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Articulately expressing.
I got it.
I'm glad you can interpret. Okay, here we are, 5. Permitted residential density, maximum residential density proposed MDP shall be equal to the gross lot area divided by half acre. So we meet this requirement.
Correct.
And hotels are not relevant. And 20% of the units are going to be restricted.
Yes, that's correct.
Number, did you calculate how?
I don't think we have actually accomplished that yet, but we'll have to do that as part of going to the through the town board process. But we will make sure that we comply with that.
Could it possibly be more than the 20%?
I can't speak on behalf of the applicant for that part, but I know we'll at least meet it.
Yeah, I know, because I thought they were talking about maybe a greater area even, or more of the units, but I don't know where they are
Yeah,
at this point.
Correct, yeah.
But regardless, they have to do 20%.
Correct.
Okay. Because I'm thinking we probably should know which units. So is it going to be the seniors? Is it going to be the townhouses? Does it have to be across the board? Can it be one? Because there's a mix of types here, so it would be useful to find out if you could get us that information. If there's a minimum, how are they breaking that up?
I can certainly ask.
Thank you.
I don't know that your code specifies it, but usually it's required to be some sort of mix in terms of number of bedrooms and where they're located, that kind of thing, kind of integrated throughout.
And this discussion, I don't know if it's happened already at the town board level, but I don't know what they were thinking when they wrote the law in terms of, do they want across the board, or as long as there's some units, so just have to find out.
Sure.
Okay, and so clearly you have seniors. So 7 is met. Meet the bedroom requirement.
Yes, we do.
So I would actually expect, since the zoning allows for, it's not really calling for 15% to at least to be senior and 20% to be affordable housing, those percentages can overlap. So you could provide 20% affordable housing, they could all be senior units, or 15% of the units could be senior units and meet the requirement that way. And since this applicant is proposing that the majority of the units are senior housing, I would expect that the affordable housing will land in that building.
That very well may be the case, yeah.
It's just, that was a big part of the discussion back and forth between the planning board and the town board when we were making our original recommendations around the code.
I'll defer to you because I recused myself during that time period, so you would recall better than,
There was,
What
I
the
don't
intent
recall any
was.
discussion around there being a requirement to mix it up in and amongst the different types of housing that's being offered. But I had asked that question about, could they overlap? Could they overlap partially? Could the one be taken care of by the other? And
that might be in the GEIS. It may have been
Maybe.
addressessed as a, especially if you raise comments, it's possible, but
Possible.
I'm not sure. But we'll get clarification from the town.
Regarding both those items 6 and 7, the workforce, housing, and senior, they'll need to provide, which I assume you'll do at the town board level, what measures will be in place in order to restrict those for a minimum of 30 years, I believe it is?
Yes, we'll look at that.
Number 9, proposals conceptually sound in that it meets a demonstrated community market need, conforms to sustainable design principles in the layout, land use configuration, open space, drainage system, scale of the elements, absolute, and as they relate to one another.
I would hope this would be your model project. I said I would hope this would be your model project. I think we've done a good job of meeting those criteria.
I would agree. I think the fact that this is reuse in and of itself makes it sustainable. And the reuse is occurring in areas where there had been development, where there had been, primarily where there had been disturbances. If anybody wants to add to this, just please do. Adequate public facility services, utilities, road access available to support the development. I think we addressed this all as part of our seeker review, and we had issued a neg deck on that. Ownership, land proposed for a CCR may be owned by one or more persons or corporations. So I think that's met. You did provide a fiscal impact analysis.
Correct.
You meet the maximum site-wide floor area ratio.
Yep, we're just below.
And then these are the principal permitted uses. So we're proposing multifamily, the townhouses, obviously the senior units, which are multifamily as well. Those other uses are not proposed.
Correct.
Going back to the number of bedrooms, do you have that calculation somewhere? Because I know your petition says you meet it. I don't think your petition talked about the 20%.
So
That can't be
the petition actually
3
goes through
bedrooms?
every single one of these items and provides a response to it. But you'd have to bring up the site plan. I don't have that knowledge right here in my head, but I know the bedroom counts for the different units are shown on
I
the
know
maps.
the petition gives the average, but it doesn't say whether you meet the requirement that 3 bedrooms are less than 20% of the units.
I don't recall off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it. But
Remember that huge chart on the site plan sheet?
yeah,
It may just be on the site plan. not-
yeah.
From January,
So if you have that informational meetings folder, that one that I had set up for the town, it would be in there. The actual, the petition itself would be in there.
I have a question. In the senior housing building, I remember when you and the developer were doing the presentation to the public, and we'd viewed a video of a similar facility that they had built down, I guess, in Rockland, that we had talked about, and there were some public or common areas that seemed to be in that building. Is there anything like that proposed for this senior housing facility, or is everything strictly residential throughout the entire building, and there's no common areas, public meeting, any sort of food provision?
Yeah, so to be accurate, we'd have to take a look at the architectural plan and open it up. It's been a while since I've
Yeah.
actually looked at that. But I can tell you on the exterior, we have some patio areas out behind the senior building that are going to be usable for everybody. So that would kind of meet that criteria in that sense. Interior-wise, we'd have to look at the floor plan for me to answer the question accurately.
I don't recall anything like that from looking at the architecturals for this facility, but I can't remember myself. And I'm just wondering if those kinds of common area public space uses would fall under the permitted, what are we looking at? Permitted principal uses, if that would fall under possibly, like what we're talking about with H, sit-down restaurants, personal service establishments, or retail uses restricted to no more than 5% of the gross floor area, and integrated into clubhouses, recreational uses, or other accessory non-residential structures. And I'm not sure that it would necessarily fall under that or not.
Those would be accessory, though, to the permitted use.
Right. And I know it wouldn't be a significant portion of the building, so I think we'd be under 5%.
I would
I just,
We can make sure that when we finalize the architectural plans, that we obviously meet that criteria regardless.
We have the bedrooms here broken out for the parking. Was there another table?
If you go to that same sheet, but you just go further up, you should have that table that shows the bedroom counts, the sizes of each unit there. So it would keep going to the next page. I think this is still like the existing conditions sheet. So you'd probably be at
Doesn't
least.
look like the calculation, or it's just the number of bedrooms. Bedrooms are so,
Correct.
Talking about the ownership, so I think the narrative refers to it as the 89-acre parent parcel. It's really two parcels, right?
Well, yeah, but they're
That'll be
hooked. Yeah,
merged.
they're one tax lot.
I thought they were two separate tax lots.
No, they're one tax lot. There are other properties that are in common ownership that we've used in order to get some of that open space development. But the actual main parcel that we are constructing on is one tax parcel.
So in terms of your 3 bedrooms, oh. Got 12
24 total.
plus 1 plus 11. 24 divided by, and 178 units. So that's definitely below that requirement. And then the question is, are you 2.25 average?
Yes, they gave that calculation in the narrative. I think it's
Narrative,
1
yeah.
point
Okay,
something.
so then that's met. Okay, we went through 9, we went through 10, 11, 12, 13. We went through the permitted principal uses, accessory uses.
I'm sorry, just going back to the tax lots. So the 89.1, that's all one lot. But you said you're adding in additional,
So if we could bring the site plan up, it would probably be easier. We actually, and I'll show you what I'm saying as soon as we bring the site plan up.
You want the master development plan?
We should be able to use actually this sheet. If you just scroll out, I might be able to, or zoom out, I should be able to see what we're doing here. So right there, you see that triangular parcel right there? Whoops, you zoomed out to that one right there. We are including that. That's under ownership by the sisters. We are including that right now as part of the open space area. We actually do meet the criteria without it as well. We'll still be 65%. But if I include that, we're at the 72-something%. But
That's included in to get to the 89 acres, I believe, because the other portions are 51 and 34. So that 3 acres is considered part of the site?
correct, yes, yeah.
Because that'll all have to be, for purposes of ownership, the entire CCR has to be one parcel and then could be subdivided later on, but that all has to be merged.
How does the proposed parkland that I think is going to be gifted to the town factor in to any of the calculations?
That was the soccer field? I don't think that was,
We had some emails going back and forth, and I think I did remove that, yeah,
Okay, so that's not part of our required open space.
correct.
Okay, good. There are various accessory uses that'll be proposed as shown on the site plan.
And C covers what I was talking about, what I was considering. Common dining, personal services, housekeeping, if any of that's provided on the architecturals, it's all accessory, under the accessory uses.
Right, makes
So we don't
sense.
have an issue there.
Correct.
So we're not meeting B because I think we are encroaching within buffers.
Yes, we are encroaching. The Army Corps, rough number was 350 square feet, give or take 10 square feet. The DEC buffer was larger, but that was also at the request of the DEC for us to provide an adequate access road to the wastewater treatment plant. So those are the only 2 areas where we have an encroachment.
So this is the one encroachment in here. It's for the buildings and the parking and the driveway.
Yeah, I believe it's the back right corner of the parking lot is the area where we have just a little bit of small disturbance there.
Drive on the southern.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. I
And then
mean,
on the southern end, I was gonna,
so the southern end, I don't think we have any Army Corps. I think it's only the DEC buffer,
Okay.
the DEC adjacent area. Yes, but I think I put a retaining wall there. I don't recall off the top of my head. Is there a small amount on that southern access? It wouldn't be on this. Okay, so the town of Monroe wetland buffer, yeah, on this side too. Yeah, we do
I think
actually.
there's,
There is an Army Corps wetland in there. That's the one.
Right,
If you
and-
go to the grading plan will show you if there's any disturbance in that area, which probably is like the next sheet or 2.
that provision allows it for access roads or driveways.
Get that?
That, the provision that Bonnie was going over for buffering, the design standard says that it could be permitted for access roads or driveways.
And for whatever it's worth, we utilize pretty much this existing access road that's going through that area as it is. Again, trying to reutilize impervious surfaces.
I think it's more the other side of the street where there's more than just the access being encroached upon.
That first element in that section was that within 35% of lot area that's designated for development, no more than 65 is covered with impervious surface. Is that calculation?
That should be, I think that's on the plans, yeah. So that
So this-
drainage facility up there in the upper left-hand corner, we have some disturbance within the town of Monroe wetland buffer. Those have been quantified.
And also over here, this is buffer.
In that buffer as well, correct. But we actually have, I think it's labeled right there, we do have a slight amount of actual wetland disturbance itself.
Right, and then this 100-foot area
Correct.
is going into the building.
That's correct.
So I think we need to note that in terms of our recommendation to the,
Access road of the building is going into the
So-
local wetland?
yeah, building,
Two.
building 2. And the landscaping, sidewalks, parking, driveway, and stormwater management are in the buffer, and then there is encroachment in the wetland itself.
That wetland is a local?
It's an Army Corps wetland. So that would be a town wetland buffer.
Other encroachments were on the access road.
Is on, with the senior building, it's the access road. Can't tell if, I don't think is the stormwater management going into that wetland buffer?
Not the, well, on this side here,
Yeah.
that one may be, yeah, slightly. I mean, I have the line drawn there. I can't tell if it extends into it or not from where I'm sitting.
So here's the buffer in here.
The adjacent area, buffer disturbance, correct?
Yep. And so it's adjacent area, that's DEC, is that DEC over there?
That's correct.
Okay. And then you have a little bit of the wastewater treatment plant is actually in the 100-foot.
Yeah.
But that exists already. So the wastewater treatment plant that's by the senior building is in the 100-foot adjacent area. And that already exists. And then in order to get access to it in the future, there will be a access road that will be in that buffer.
Correct.
Distance requirements, we meet that? Between the buildings?
Yes, we do. I think the average height of the multifamilies, for instance, is around 35 feet. I want to say that we are 30 to 40 feet of a separation distance between the two buildings. That would probably be on the site plan.
Yeah, so it's not on this side, it's the other side that's
Correct,
more
the other side is, yeah, and it's only between the two multifamily buildings. The other buildings, certainly, they have a parking lot separating them, so they certainly meet that requirement. So there's a dimension right there, if you zoom in.
This is 31 and a half between building 3 and building 2.
Correct.
Building height
Table.
bulk table?
We can add that. It's on, obviously, the architectural plans.
Oh, so we'll need the building heights for all of them, but I think it's the multifamily that are the ones that are in question.
And I think, that what did it call for? 1/2 the height to be the separation distance?
I thought it was equal to the average, where was it?
Distance between
Not less than their
buildings, not
average
less than
height.
their average.
We'll double check that, but I believe at some point I had actually separated them more to make sure that I had actually met that requirement.
And then the maximum building height of 40 feet.
That I know we meet,
Right.
yes.
So I think it's whether you went to the max, if you went to the max 40 and you're 31, then you're not meeting you may not be meeting the requirement, but you have to look at the building height definition.
Correct. I'm pretty sure it's to the eave, and if that's the case, then we're well below it.
And has the maximum.
Yeah, that should be in a calculation, bottom right-hand corner of the master development plan. There it is, yeah.
It's .065. Did the architecturals have the maximum sizes for all the units?
They did. Matter of fact, they're even labeled on the site plan in terms of square footage in relationship to the
Bedrooms.
bedrooms, yes. If you scroll up, it'll be a little bit further up. And that same table is on the architectural plans.
There we go. So design considerations, these are advisory. And the stone walls are being kept.
Yes,
Our townhouses are served by parking stalls, so we don't have garages.
correct.
Buildings and are set back more than 25 feet, and then visual screening between residential yards and between residents, non-residential areas. Those are the criteria. So from what we've discussed, we need to find out about the building height. And the application doesn't meet the wetland buffer requirements in a few places.
Does or does not?
Does not.
Correct, yeah. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly.
So for this evening, Ashley, should we say, I guess, should we consider that approve with, should we wait to see what is written up, or should we talk about now whether we approve modifications, or disapprove?
Talk about it, but I'd write something up then for you to actually
Right.
authorize on Tuesday.
Okay. Should we wait for that for the discussion, or discuss it now?
You can discuss it, I mean, any other comments you have as far as layout or anything else you want included.
Board members, anything else you want to bring up? Anything? Okay.
If I could just make one comment, for what it's worth, going back to the buffer disturbance, keep in mind that we were trying to use that existing development area and impervious surface, which ended up falling within the buffer zone. So it was a trade-off of, it was already there. It makes sense to use it and not disturb anything anywhere else. So just for the board's consideration when they're thinking about that one component.
Yeah, and that factor goes all the way back to the very beginning of the conversations about this development and the concept of it. And I know for the developer, one of the important keys was to try and reuse what had been done before in every possible opportunity. I'm going to recommend that our recommendation from the board be approve rather than approve with modifications or deny. I feel like a lot of the modifications that we've considered have already been taken into factor with the most recent submissions, and that we've kind of got this to where we're satisfied. We ultimately made the declaration on secret that we did about the impacts, in part because of the modifications to the design that have come throughout the process. And I think that what the developer is coming to us with is a very sound concept and a very sound project, and something that'll be complementary to our town. So I'm going to recommend for an approve.
Matt, anything? Add to that? Or you want to approve with modifications? Any changes you think need to be made?
No, I'm satisfied with where we are.
So I have a question. So in terms of ownership, are the sisters going to continue to own this
That's my understanding from the public information meeting, yes.
so that they can get the revenue stream and
Correct.
that will subsidize them? The triangular parcels being included, correct?
It is, yes.
Blythea is owned by the sisters as well,
Correct.
I believe.
Correct.
So what is the eventual disposition of that? Because is that going to be included as all one lot, or that's going to remain a separate lot? Sort of that's been one of the areas where people have been the most concerned, so,
Blythea.
yeah.
Can you bring up the existing conditions plan? I just want to see where the lot lines fall as it relates to the lake.
This is the way it appears on Orange County GIS, but let me bring up.
Okay, I can't see
I'll bring
that.
up here we go. Oops. May not have actually, I don't know if it was mapped.
I believe most of it's is it in a separate tax parcel? Or is it part of this? I can't see where the lot lines are from this distance.
This is showing as a lot line in here. The lake, the tax parcel isn't really being shown. At least the way this looks to me. Here, because here's the triangular, right?
Right.
And then you have these houses that the rear yards go to the lake.
Would you zoom in a little bit more?
Into here?
Yeah, into the lake area.
Yep. So that outline is the parcel. And that definitely shows up as, well, when I brought it up, it was showing up as sister servants. Sister
Yeah,
servants.
you know,
the
it is in their
Palatine.
it is in their ownership. I know that. Yes.
Right, Palatine. So I think I just want to understand how the ownership and if they would keep this or what they would do with it, or would they or could they just incorporate this into the overall project? Because it's sort of the standalone property. And I think that the treatment plant, the outfall, is the outfall on this parcel or on this parcel? Do we know?
So the outfall for the southern parcel, if you recall, discharges to the DEC wetland adjacent area, actually. It's the northern plant, the sand filter plant, also known as St. Pat's, that discharges to the adjacent, I should say, just before Blythea Lake, essentially.
Right, because there was one was going to discharge to the wetland. The other one is going to continue to discharge to the lake.
Correct.
Is that, because we were talking about the triangular piece, that wastewater treatment plant is serving more than just this project? Because it's serving the other facilities across the street, correct?
My understanding is right now it's only serving Little Pals Preschool
Okay.
and the Vincent Pilates Center, but the Vincent Pilates Center is highly unused. Most days right now, they're not even contributing 500 to 1,000 gallons a day to Blythea Lake. So those will continue to, be served by St. Pat's wastewater treatment plant in addition to our project. That plant, if I'm not mistaken, is rated at 25,000 gallons a day. Excuse me, and even with the flow that we will be contributing to it with the new development, we fall pretty well below the permit threshold of 25,000. I don't remember the exact numbers, but 16, 17, 18,000 gallons, somewhere in that range, is what we might be actually contributing now.
So I am going to approve. The only thing that I would like added to the narrative is consideration of the wastewater treatment plant location, the lake, the discharge, and sort of should the lake be attached to any of these other parcels? That part of the project, or just think, in other words, think long-term about what makes sense for the lake, that triangular parcel, in part based on the wastewater treatment plant and what it's serving, and who's going to ultimately own it and continue to maintain it. I just want some consideration that there are multiple properties here, and that one of them is the lake, which is separate and apart. And
Lake is not part of the,
right. I don't think it's been part of this application, I didn't think.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so, but it exists. It's, where homeowners have been sensitive to, effluent discharge. And if it's kind of hanging out there on its own, is it getting maintained? Whereas if it's attached to something, would it be more likely to be maintained in terms of water quality? Acknowledging that
Always in the same ownership regardless.
there's also other contributors to water quality in that watershed, not just the sisters.
Sure.
So again, I don't know how, I'm not articulating that well, but it's just want the town board to be aware that that's a separate parcel. And those are my comments. So then I think for Tuesday, you'll be preparing a narrative and a recommendation so that we can send that off to the town board. Great. Anything else you need, Ashley? Sean, anything you want to know? Board members?
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
So will you be here on Tuesday, or are you going to?
I have a conflict as it stands. Let me see if I can move things around and try to make it.
Okay.
But
Just be
highly
aware that
highly
will-
unlikely. I've got a project that I've had for 5 years that I'm trying to close the public hearing on. So if I don't show up to that, you might not ever see me again.
Okay. So just be aware that this will be on the agenda for next
Understood.
Tuesday. Thank you. All right. So then,
I
go
can't.
to the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thanks for help with the agenda tonight.
All right, next item on the agenda is 17M Executive Offices. Route 17M, Monroe. If you'd come up, state your name for the record. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andre Lukianoff of Engineering Properties, and I'm here in regards to 17M Executive Offices. We're just sort of just going through the project over here and trying to see if there's any further input or updates that would actually help us push us toward the planning board and trying to move the project along further. We've tried to address all the different points that were addressed in the previous meeting, even including items that were not specifically in the comments, but just noted from the previous meeting. And we're just trying to see what other things that we would really need to sort of add to sort of help move it forward.
So why don't we start with our engineer? See if there are any comments.
Or just a few that weren't touched on last time. The applicant addressed our previous environmental assessment form comments. They also provided an architectural rendering for the building. And at first glance, the height looked to be above what is required, or the maximum required by town code. But I did send that off to Ben Maldonado, the building inspector, which he determined that it does meet the maximum height requirement in the zoning code. Then just kind of a reiteration of the comments with regards to Orange and Rockland. The applicant said they've reached out to ONR with regards to the disturbances within the easement that's on the site, but have not received any information back. I don't know if there's any update to that.
Not yet. We're still trying to work with them on it. We just finished actually doing one project with them, so we're sort of shifting gears and trying to go to another one. So I think they're getting quite an earful from us at this point in time.
All right, and then the only other one was, I think you were going to look tonight to possibly circulate for lead agency. Just a reminder that the access is to 17M through an existing shared commercial access drive with no improvements within the right-of-way at this point, subject to probably some drainage improvements in the future, but I just suggest that you circulate to DOT with the circulation. So.
Is that it, Sean?
We discussed last time, there is, I think it's mentioned in Sean's memo as well, some easements. So the applicant indicated they're going to be providing copies of those easements, the access easement on the property. There was some additional paperwork just that needed to be resubmitted. The deed that was submitted was missing a page. The owner's endorsement should indicate whoever's signing indicate their role in the LLC, and then complete section B of the entity disclosure form.
That again, just I can write it down.
Or the owner's endorsement to indicate it's an LLC owner, so whoever's signing, if they're the member or the manager, managing member, whatever their role is. And then section B of the entity disclosure form wasn't completed, and the deed was missing a page.
Should I address that with the next one on that one?
A couple of other things that I know you're still early on here, but the board does have the architectural review, so we'll need all the details per the code in section 57-31, and then also a tree plan pursuant to the town tree code, which you should keep your eye on because it is being considered. There's amendments to the tree code being considered currently.
Do we know when there's going to be an update with that, so that way we can sort of keep an eye out for it, or could that be sent to us when it's
I think it was
released?
on an upcoming agenda.
They're still in public hearing on
There's still
that,
a public
so.
hearing. And it's not, I don't think, going to change that substantially, so you'll still have to identify the trees that you're removing and all that, so.
Okay.
And then it would be an unlisted action under seeker, and it does require referral to the county as well. If the board wanted to make a preliminary classification as unlisted and declare your intent to be lead agency and circulate a lead agency notice, I could prepare that for you.
Any comments? I'm thinking.
No, you're fine.
Pat, any comments on this?
No comments, no.
None?
Mike,
Jeff?
no, rattled the head.
No comment.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of our last meeting, and so can you, again, just for my benefit, give a brief overview of the project and what's anticipated to be built here?
Okay, well, I actually have in the nice little narrative, in the comment response letter, the proposed project consists of one unusually shaped building with 36 6,600 square feet of office space, 2.5 stories, with parking underneath the building. The site utilizes retaining walls and will require plenty of earthworks calculation as well as coordination with on-site easements, Orange and Rockland primarily, among others. This parcel is located in the general business zone.
How many offices roughly might you anticipate occupying the building?
I'd have to find out that. I really wouldn't know off the top of my head on that one.
Is this being considered as a building, as a headquarters for one particular company, or is this professional office space?
At this point, I don't know.
Okay.
However, I think the general premise I think they want to try doing would probably be like either a professional office of some kind or offices, probably more than one. But I think that's the general direction, at least the impression I got.
Okay, I mean, part of
We'll
what
find out more later.
Part of what I'm wondering about is anticipated traffic, not just for people working in the offices, but visitors to the office, whether that would be patients in a medical office or clients or customers, depending on what kind of facilities wind up in the building. I know that, well, I'm certain that the number of parking spaces that you're proposing is what's required under the code. I'm just wondering if that's a realistic number of spaces for what's the anticipated uses. I appreciate that there's consideration for placing some of the parking underneath the building. I think that's a real plus. I was working in Harriman last week, so I was back and forth all week in front of the site. So I was kind of taking a look at some of the topography and, in particular, the existing access road where the existing small commercial building is in the front on the separate lot. And so I assume that that's what you're connecting into. That same access driveway into that small building will become the access road for this building as well.
Correct.
My net impression, without having walked it, is it's not in great shape. And it's not, I don't know whether it's a maintenance issue. It sort of looks, no, the access drive, I'm not so concerned about the existing building. The existing building is what it is. But the access drive just to that building, and again, looking at the number of parking spaces that are being proposed, and the size of the building, I'm anticipating that the use of that is going to be somewhat extensive. I think that how it connects into the road and the site visibilities will probably wind up being very good along that stretch of road, but the condition of that access driveway into such a large facility compared to what it's servicing right now is definitely a concern of mine. There appears to be, partway down the slope, a hump in the driveway that I can't really tell whether that's like an underground culvert or pipe that's pushing up, or it almost reminds me of when you're hiking a trail and they put rocks across the trail to manage the flow of water and sort of direct it off the hillside instead of running down the driveway. So I'm not sure whether that's purposeful for that reason or whether it's just occurred over time, but
Something that we can look into on that one, especially with potential road improvements. But also it depends, again, like you mentioned too, it depends on the type of office that'll be there, because if it ends up being something like medical office, traffic won't be high going through there. But if it ends up being something like a professional office, then you'll have pretty much your peak hour going in, your peak hour coming out. But then, again, it depends what's exactly going to be there. We'll have to find that out more from our clients.
Well, agreed. And if it's the kind of office where people are going to work and they're going to do their work and there's not going to be a lot of visitor traffic, that's one thing. And that may also play into the number of parking spaces. I don't know in the general business district whether we have any latitude around the parking spaces we require, but it looks like every conceivable spot where there could be parking is proposed. And I suspect that that's more a factor of what we require than what might be needed. And I hope that we'll take that into consideration if we have that latitude.
So I too, I'm not a big fan of this layout. and we keep seeing these non-residential developments where they're just maxing everything out on the site, especially impervious and parking. So it's at 1 to 200 for an office, which is not an unusual requirement, although you can reduce it using the alternative method, and I think maybe in our code, we also can waive or reserve area.
I believe you can. I think it goes up to like 25%, I think, but I don't recall offhand.
So the way I see this is someone's traveling along 17M, and there's basically almost no landscaping or vegetative relief all the way up to the building. Because you're gonna have that front yard, and by the way, where is the drainage going to go? Is there gonna be subsurface?
It'll be
or-
subsurface,
Okay.
probably in toward the front of the building.
So you won't have any stormwater basins in the front, et cetera?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But again, we have to verify that when we get to look further into design.
So you're going to be grading out the front, and then on one side, you're going to have, it looks like the wall's going to be 8 feet, tapering to, well, it's going to be like 8 to 9 feet, right? And one of the buildings that I really dislike in the town is, and I think it's in the town, even though it's also in the village, is the Harriman Building, the concrete wall building, which etched into it has the number for the office. I think that, I mean, they put some landscaping in the front, but basically there's a big concrete retaining wall there. And I suspect it's higher than this, but I want to see vegetation as far as some kind of landscape strip in that first row of parking spaces somehow. In the best of all worlds, I would like to not see the 5 spaces that are up against that other existing building, because I think if you avoid that, you may avoid some of, and it's a question for you, would you avoid some of the grading that has to happen for that drive where the 5 spaces are next to the existing building?
Which 5? Because you actually have the 5 which
Well,
are, so like right behind the building, or you got the 5 which are basically?
so where you have the existing building and you have an 8-foot side yard setback, that 5, where the
Okay.
retaining wall is. I also am not a fan of the 7, 5, 4, and 7 layout coming in,
Right.
because I think if you didn't have all that parking, you might actually have some green back there too. I think there's just a tremendous amount of grading, and where the utility easement is, I don't think there's vegetation. So you basically have the building and retaining walls going up. This whole site's going to be basically denuded right up to a utility easement. So I think that we need to do a better job of not putting boxes on hillsides. And it's not about the amount of space,
Yeah.
but it's doing something that maybe is a little more terrain adaptive and that can preserve more vegetation.
Also a little bit more for the aesthetic as well, so it
Yeah.
makes it a little prettier on the eye than such.
Yeah, I think there just needs to be more conceptually than plopping down, again, a 3.5-story building. I'm all for the rateable, but we need some visual relief here. We need some landscaping, and our site plan, our code talks about terrain adaptive, working with the slope. And so I appreciate, you're trying to put this all together on this site. It's an odd-shaped site.
Oh, that it is.
And you are trying to work with the slope, but I think we need to do more, and I would like you to examine whether or not, in fact, you do need all this parking or not, because I think that's half the battle. So that's sort of how I feel about the project at this point.
Make sure to double check exactly what type of offices they're really focusing on, and also find out a little bit more about, in the code as well, in regards to the potential of a waiver of at least to some of the parking. So that way, I think with a little bit of a parking reduction of sorts, we can actually add a little bit better green space.
Right, and I think if it makes sense, there may be there may be flexibility, and if there isn't flexibility, but if the reality is you don't need all these spaces, maybe it does make sense to go for a variance. So I just, and also to the point about that gravel, strange gravel yard and how you're coming in to the site, that's gonna have to be improved somehow. I know you're not showing it here, but to get access to 36,000 square feet building through this gravelly, dippy
Well,
potholed
Yeah,
sometimes,
probably
you
the
know.
improvements are probably going to have to be done there
And,
too.
and so I think we need to know what rights you have to be able to make those improvements. I assume it's your property, you can, but you're not really showing improvements in that area. You're showing existing paved area. So we need to see whatever improvements are going all the way down to the road.
I mean, it looks like what you're proposing from the materials that you provided, from the architecturals, you're proposing a modern, professional-looking building, and when people turn onto that entrance drive, they're going to go, where am I turning into? Is this, I couldn't possibly be going to the right place to see my lawyer, my accountant, my doctor, my architect, my engineer.
I figure there'll also probably be at least some kind of signage that'll actually be rather obvious on that one to sort of help people get in.
It'll tell them they're in the right place, but they'll still wonder if they're
Yeah.
on that driveway.
This is a very long building also. So again, if you could break up the square, I don't know if architecturally how it's being articulated. But again, I think we just need to see a little more in terms of refinement and making it attractive, you know, new project in the town, and trying to build in some, you know, preservation of some of the existing vegetation if possible. Where are we as far as seeker? Should we hold off if they're going to make some revisions? Or should we circulate?
I think this will be the maximum that's proposed, so changes would reduce the
lesser?
scale. Yeah.
Okay. So I would make a motion that the planning board.
Specify as,
Yep. That the planning board declare its intent to be lead agency and that the action be classified an unlisted action. May I have a second?
Second?
Noreen?
Nick Napoli,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Pat Shea.
Aye.
Anything else we need to address this evening? No? Okay. So we'll start the lead agency process. And, you know, we welcome additional alternatives as to what could be done there. And I think at this point, if you are going to be able to, you know, put some stuff together, just, it's okay to put it in sketch form. You know, we're not looking you to fully engineer anything.
All right, not a problem there. Like I said, it's still a little bit more to discuss with the client on it.
Yeah, of course.
But we'll definitely be trying to spearhead that a little bit more and actually take a look a little bit also on where some waivers could be done with the parking as well. So that's probably one of the key points to look at. To
Yeah.
say, if we can reduce what type of offices are there, it might actually help you a bit more.
Yeah, it'd be good if you could define it. We certainly don't want to create a parking problem, but, you know, again, and making the building a slightly smaller would also help. But there's a variety of options that we can explore, and I appreciate it.
I'm just glad to actually get the input on that one.
You have any questions for us?
Not at the moment.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. All right, next item on the agenda will be the Route 17M mixed-use building. Good evening.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see everyone healthy and here. We haven't been before this board in a while. As you can tell from our cover letter, the last comment letter that we responded to on this project was September 29th of 2022. So it's been a while for a whole bunch of reasons. Some of them I'd like to discuss tonight. Others are just part of the course of events with the owner developer. So I have a lot of information to share. I realize that it's been a long time. However the board would like to proceed, I can do so. If you want to start with questions, you want to start with comments, or I can go into an overview of everything.
I just want to bring to everybody's attention that this is the property that is next to the property that we just explored. And so we should be thinking about, there's an opportunity here for synergies and for possibility for efficiencies, possibly if connections are possible, driveways, et cetera. We should kind of look at how they might interrelate if it helps.
I have to tell you,
Why don't you
they've been uncooperative. Yes, so.
Oh, okay. With this group?
Well, we couldn't even obtain a temporary construction easement from them, which was something that we had needed, which was part of the delay. So we'd like to have the project just stand on its own and move ahead. It's been part of the months that we've lost has been associated with trying to negotiate with them.
Okay.
So.
Well, give us your updates then so we can appreciate them. Thank you.
Okay, so the building shape hasn't changed actually at all. We're still proposing 2,900 square feet per floor and then plus an additional 700 square feet on a half-story or third floor. The first floor would remain retail as we originally discussed, and the second floor would be offices. We've had to modify the site design basically because we could not obtain temporary construction easements from either neighbor to the south and to the north, well, actually to the east and to the west. And recently, we were not able to obtain a temporary construction easement from the neighbor to the south. So that's going to also impact my presentation to you. I feel in an awkward position because of everything that's just recently developed, but if I'll have a moment of your time, I can definitely explain it. The retaining walls that we show on the site plan are associated with a retaining block detail. We would have to replace that with concrete to not impact the neighboring properties. The retaining wall to the, I would say to the side, or let's see, to the west, starts at about 3 foot and then increases in height to about 14 feet. That wall, even though we do show a block retaining wall detail, that would have to be removed. We will be proposing a concrete retaining wall along the east along the west and along the south. I feel, though, that the location of the walls can remain in place because with concrete, we would not need to extend the reinforcing or the method of construction as far back as you have to with a concrete block retaining wall. Concrete retaining wall itself depends on the rebar, the type of control fill that's placed against it on the backside and also underneath the footing. And it also generally has a toe. So the footing would be about 4 or 5 feet depending on the conditions, and the retaining wall biased to one side. That being said, our retaining walls on the west and the south remain between 10 to 15 to 18 feet away from the property lines. So minusing a 5-foot toe on a retaining wall, we would still be in great shape and not impact the neighbor's property. It could be a shear cut type excavation with stabilization as the forms go up. That was one of the reasons why we have not been before the board for so long. So even in our cover letter, we were under the impression that we would get a temporary construction easement from the neighbor to the south at the last minute, or that just did not pan out. So we'll have to retract that and revise the construction details for those retaining walls to show no impact on the neighbor's properties. That's one.
So the construction easement is required to be able to build the walls?
To build concrete block or retaining block wall detail, a type of construction.
Okay.
But because with a retaining wall block type of construction, the geogrid that's associated with it extends back into the earth.
Right.
Let's just say 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet, whatever the case is. So in so doing, you have to remove that earth to put in the retaining block wall construction, and as the wall goes up, you replace the earth in the back. We're not going to be able to do that. Okay, we will. It impacts the neighbor's properties. So we're going to have to abandon that detail in its entirety, and all these retaining walls, well, the two that we show, will be in concrete, and we'll have to provide those details.
Can the concrete, just in general walls, be surfaced? Because if you look at, in the Village of Monroe, over by our beautiful mill pond, where they put the new senior project in, that retaining wall there has no relationship to anything historic next to it or beside it. It's horrible. So I just have to say these things because I feel very passionate about a certain improvements that have been made. And so my question is that the kind of retaining wall, or can you put something in that's concrete but that can be faced so it doesn't look like that kind of a retaining wall?
Absolutely. We can design something to minimize the impact of the height and also minimize the impact, the visual impact, to make it such that, to make it more aesthetically pleasing.
DOT does it all the time with their bridge abutments. They have a form on the outside that is shaped so that when the concrete hits it, it forms to the shape, and then it looks more aesthetically pleasing.
Oh, I'm thinking more, Medline. They have very big retaining walls. I don't know if they were the geotype or if they are. So can a concrete then form? So I'm not talking about stamped concrete. I mean
That's essentially what it will be.
So you can't get it faced with some kind of stone or anything?
You could put a veneer on the outside, sure.
That's what I'm wondering. Is it possible to put some stone veneer to make it look better?
Yeah.
But is that typically done, or I don't know?
It'd be required as part of the architectural review by this board.
Okay. All right.
So
I'm just reacting to when you said concrete.
You know what, I understand, and I do feel in an awkward position here because of all the events that happened recently and what we proposed on a plan and what I'm telling you right now. Yet, a stone veneer over concrete will become very costly, but there are textures, there are stipple effects that can be added.
If I could just make a suggestion to look into a retaining wall type that's called Forix, F-O-R-I-X. That is a retaining wall that does not require geogrid, and it's modular block. So it's much less footprint of disturbance.
Is this the one that Ryan talked about in Montgomery? Someone was talking
Maybe.
about this somewhere.
Actually, Mountain View Shul just switched to this type of block.
Okay.
A&R Concrete in
Okay.
Blooming Grove makes it or produces it. So A&R, yep.
We will definitely look into that without question.
So I'm just going to say globally that, in part, the need for retaining walls and going in one direction for another is a result of maxing out the development on a site. So I appreciate the issues, but at some point, I think we have to look at the balance between maxing out the site and putting in something that works for Monroe. So that's just my reaction. So I appreciate that you were trying to negotiate with the adjoining property owners so that you could put in a better retaining wall design. I really do.
And we balanced out the site. We were cognizant of landscaping in the front and around the sides, and, we can definitely elaborate on that.
Have to speak into the mic.
Oh, so
We get warned that we can't hear you.
We tried to maintain a balance with the site. We were cognizant of landscaping along 17M and in different island portions around the property. So we haven't ignored that. We do realize we have this wall, but we do propose landscaping. Why don't I continue? And just to bring the board up to date with everything, another item that we were asked to research, which actually took a little more time than anticipated, was existing sewer. So finally, we did get an email back from Orange County Sewer, or as commonly known anyway, and they have no information on the sewer along 17M, and I think we shared this email as part of our attachments. So a site survey would have to be done, and I would ask the board at that time that, maybe we do that as part of a pre-construction, aspect, because it'll take a lot to survey that. It would take a lot to survey that sewer line. And so during mobilization or prior to construction or as a condition associated with the building permit application, the owner and developer can definitely, or the developer can research the inverts associated with the sewer going across. In addition to that,
Can I just address that? I would just caution the board against waiting until construction, because that could drive the whole elevation of the building. Because if it's set too low and the sewer can't be serviced, or excuse me, the building can't be serviced by sewer because the sewer main is too high, that could affect the whole grading plan, so.
well, we're sloping up to the building from 17M. I'll go out on a limb. Usually the sewer is about 24 to 30 inches below the street or more. I don't think it could be less. Even at that point, we would hit it without question, because all our plumbing fixtures are on the first. You'd think I would know after all these years, right? As if from heaven, right? Comes down. So, well, I appreciate that point. And if we were accessing the site and traveling downward, I could see where that would create an alarm. Yet we are definitely increasing in elevation as we go to the site. And as long as we detail the sewer pipe coming out of the main building right underneath the first floor elevation and it traveling down, I'm quite confident that we would hit the sewer main wherever it's located. Believe me, if it was something, maybe we can discuss that further. At what point do we investigate the sewer elevations and what's a reasonable thing for the board and, of course, for the municipal engineer. So we could table that just for a little bit because I know there's other things. Also, we were asked to research for water. And I don't think we shared these emails with everybody, but I can definitely include them as attachments. We contacted the Village of Monroe, the Town of Monroe, and the Village of Harriman, and no one has documentation of water in that part of 17M. Nothing. So...
No one is what?
No one claimed, none of the three municipalities acknowledged water in 17M at that location.
They
There's no
just
water
put
service.
in water on that Orchard Hill. They had a big project there, and that was only 2 years ago, I think. All those houses were on well water, I think, for a long time. And
This is the town's water district?
I don't, the water around here is ridiculous. I don't know where where we live, we're in the town, but we have village water. It has to be the village, because the village, I believe, Monroe controls all that water. The town doesn't control any water, does it?
Does, yeah.
Oh, it does?
There's several smaller water districts.
From Monbassia? No?
No. Some of it's purchased from the village of Monroe, and the others have their own wells.
Yeah. Well, they had a huge project there, where Quick Check is, all those houses up there, which
Water
are right
District
in the
8.
back of where he is.
Right, it's Water District 8.
Yeah.
But I agree that this parcel is outside the district, so an extension would have to be made to the district by the town board, and a water main extension would have to reach this property, which is probably less cost-effective than installing a well, so.
And I'll share these documents with our next submission. We did provide an architectural rendering, something that's a little bit more modern in look that we'd like to start to develop a little further. It did change, so we don't have the elevations associated with it, but the rendering was generated from architectural elevations, and we can provide that at the submission to confirm the maximum height and the amount of stories that would be compliant with the code. Other than that, those are the updates that I have. I mean, I got a chance to read Sean's comment letter. I think a lot of what I said addresses some of his points, because they're outstanding items that we have not included, and then others that we would need to revise.
I know I've been asking about the stream and whether it's also wetland, and I don't know that we've gotten an answer yet.
No, we did from the survey, it's not wetlands.
I'd want that from a wetland scientist, not the surveyor. So maybe we could get Dave Tompkins out. We'll have our people look, so you don't have to send someone out.
Will you be requesting that soon? Okay.
So the stream goes, it actually empties, I think, a pond above this property. And then it goes along the side of the property, then comes back in. It goes already underground in front of the paved parking lot, because this is the area that I've talked about before that gets blown out when there's a bad storm. And has there been any improvements? Has DOT made any improvements as far as the piping that goes under 17M as far as capacity, or is it just, do we know what's creating the problem there?
Well, we had an excavator dig all that out, the culvert that goes under 17M. We had an excavator clear
Okay.
the culvert that was clogged.
Oh, okay.
And we included the dimensions and the shape of that on the plans. The plans were submitted to DOT. We did get preliminary comments back that we did address. I shared that with the board.
Okay.
But we believe that the new culvert pipe coming in and emptying into the culvert that goes underneath 17M will suffice.
So, in other words, you cleaned out the piece of the pipe from where the storm entered it on your property. So that piece of it was, or did you go beyond
On the other side.
all the way through?
No, on the other side of 17M.
Okay, so you went in from the other side of 17M and then through the property too?
Correct.
Okay.
Ultimately, DOT is going to permit whatever size pipe is conveying the stream to their culvert.
Right. Did you go through your comments? Did you want to go
I've
through your
not.
comments?
Sure.
Now we start there.
Try to
Are
hit
you good for now, Davis,
Oh,
for your presentation?
I just wanted to bring the board up to date
Speak.
on all of that because I do realize it's been several months, so.
Okay, thank you.
Try to hit some of the higher level items here. With regards to the driveway towards the entrance,
Which number are you?
I'm looking at number 5. A portion of the grading appears to have the driveway, or a portion of the driveway, at about 17% grade, so that'll have to be reviewed. Potentially, come up with some mitigations to get that lowered. I had previously asked if the proposed well will require a public water supply. So the applicant responded that they didn't believe so, but I think it's important to get some input from Orange County Department of Health because it's my understanding that if a well is servicing more than 25 people on a regular basis, and there's a definition in the Part 5 Public Water Supply Code, but that a regulated water, not district, but community water supply would have to be formed with the Orange County and New York State Department of Health. So that's number 7. We discussed the DOT permitting requirements for the driveway as well as the drainage. We had a couple comments with regards to the hydraulic analysis that was supplied with regards to the stream, basically as preliminary comments prior to DOT. The architectural plans to Karen Aaron, I have not heard back from her yet, but I'm sure she'll be reviewing. So that was bulk of the higher level concept comments. So this went to Karen? It did. Actually, the architectural rendering did not, but I can have that forwarded to her.
Ashley, do you have comments?
On this one, the architectural detail elaborated on. One minor issue in the bulk table, Dave, where you note the minimum 50-foot rear yard setback, you refer to I think you just refer to the wrong code section there. I'll send you the correction that you could make there.
So we're in the review. I think it might make sense, just again, thinking about interrelationships of properties, to maybe have a workshop or a technical committee meeting with the two applicants, because I think if it's in the best interests, if it creates better layouts from a health, safety, from a design, et cetera, at least there should be some communication. And I don't appreciate that the other property owner may not have been willing to work together. So there may be some benefit because they're literally right next to each other. Again, you could have, are we gonna have 3, 4, 5 access points all, next to each other when we can do something that's a little bit more comprehensive and makes sense? And that we could look at cumulatively, I think that'd be a good thing.
Absolutely.
It's rare that you get these opportunities where two projects are proposed next to each other, and if we can make it better, I think we should. So with that, any comments on this layout or any discussions about this particular project?
Just super interesting how packed how it's going to be.
It was going to be interesting because you're going to have this new building that new building and a very old building in between them. And,
Can't see there being more than one or maybe two access points to the entire thing. There's just not enough space.
yeah, it's a challenge because you're into a hillside, you know, all of those properties. And so I think we have to balance the desire to have and allow an applicant to do development on their property, but again, this sort of maxing out stuff, I think we have to take a look at and see if it could be, you know, designed in a way that provides more vegetation and screening and attractive, you know, design. Jeff, do you have anything?
I'm just wondering looking at the architectural rendering that was submitted, what you anticipate being that use on that half floor
Offices.
office space?
It's a small area, it's 700-800 square feet.
I see that it looks like almost above the wings on either side, it looks like there's balcony space there. Is that
Like a
potentially proposed for the use of the people working there, that
Yeah.
sort of thing?
Like outdoor terrace, be a flat roof construction, they can eat lunch out there, use it as an outdoor space. I think it would be very appealing to have that type of element within the building.
Okay, thank you.
So when you say proposed mixed use, what do you anticipate are the combination of uses? Is it maybe office, some retail?
Retail on the first floor,
Okay,
and then offices on the second and third. The retail, I'm imagining, if you look at the rendering, would be divided into 3 sections on the first floor. The front doors to the 2 ends would be in that white stucco section. The 2 doors or entrance doors that bipart in the middle of that glass type of wall construction would be the entrance to the interior middle retail space. Again,
so where the white car is to the right, those 2 bottom areas, it's a little tough to tell. They look like, because you're into the grade, it looks like those are windows, the way they're shown now. You're saying those would be doors?
no, they're windows.
Oh,
Talking
okay.
about the front entrance.
Okay,
on
the
on
two
left
front,
side.
you have the 2 front entrances.
Well, there'll be 3,
Okay, so you have the main one in the middle and the 2 on the side.
correct. 2
So-
on the side of the front wall, not on the side of the building. Just to be clear.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct. So I see 2, 3 entrances on this front facade.
correct.
The main one, you're saying all 3 could be 3 separate spaces, retail spaces?
I would imagine because it would create, dimensionally, would create a great store.
Then where's the entrance for the office? Is that going to be from the other side?
Yeah, you see, 'cause don't forget, you're climbing uphill. And so the entrance to the office would be in the back.
Ultimately, when we get really into this, we're going to have to see the elevations of all the sides, of course.
Absolutely.
In terms of the design, it is modern. That's metal composite? Is it like a bronzy color to it?
Which element are you referring to?
It says decorative elements, the metal composite wall panels. So the whole front facade has this metal look to it. And then it also, the roof line, that almost looks like metal seams. So I'm not entirely understanding all the materials.
Well, the white, as opposed to stucco, would be a metal-clad horizontal profile that would go around the building. The roof would be a standing seam metal roof, and the accents that you see, the wood accents, are also metal, but they have a laser imprinted wood grain to them, so it maintains its integrity despite the elements or despite the weather.
So the standing seam metal roof, the finish, you have medium bronze. It's like a dark color on the bottom. It's showing up as lighter on top. Is that just because the rendering's giving the impression that the sun is shining on it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Computer-generated renderings are great, but they are strict in their presentation because of the sun and shade and shadow. There's no fudging like I'll go, like we used to do when we were years ago. Oh, that didn't look right. I take the pencil and just, make it look right. But not nowadays. It's a lot more stricter. It's a great method. It's a great mode of operation for renderings, but it definitely does lack the human touch.
I think we have to look at what the area is considered the total square feet for parking, because you do have that outdoor area. I don't know if it counts or doesn't count toward parking, because, obviously you're getting into that half roof, but you're actually using the whole floor, but it's outdoor area. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I think it's just a question. In terms of the panels that are on that exterior area, are those metal, or those glass or plexiglass, or what were you thinking in terms of that outdoor space?
Oh, well, the railing going around.
But it looks like there's something in between them.
Oh, well, it has to be posts, so to hold up the glass panels.
They're glass panels, that's what I was asking. Okay.
So, maybe the posts simulate that wood design that we're proposing in the front and on the soffits. Try to repeat the element as much as possible, tying the building.
Those are my comments at this point. I think we just have to do some additional analysis of the site itself to go out. I know I haven't been at the site, and I'd like to walk it at some point. So we'll let you know what we coordinate. It's not a big site, so it's not going to take long. So I don't know that we have to have everybody go out there at the same time, but just to kind of take a look at it. Is that building being used right now? Is it occupied?
Old Trooper Barracks?
I'm not sure.
Doesn't look occupied. Snoop owns that, and they used to have a barber shop in there, an insurance company, but I haven't seen any activity in there. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just coordinate with you, and because the owner may want to know that we're going to go on the site, so
Yeah,
we'll do that.
absolutely. Let me know.
Okay.
And then whatever you can do to get the comments back from the other consultants. Whatever you can do to get the comments back from the other consultants, from Karen and from Dave Thomas, that would be great, so we can work within and keep moving forward.
Okay, and then again, we'll figure out whether or not somehow we can get, I think we need to talk about the relationship of the two projects together. So, any other questions at this point?
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate that. Yet I have experienced the last half a year, with the surrounding properties. So and I admire and I applaud what you're proposing. Yet if it's going to happen, I can't ask the owner, to wait another 6 months. I mean, that would need to happen now. I mean, it has been a difficult process. And if you're proposing that we sit down together, I would like to do that tomorrow.
So I think we need to see the elevations for the buildings. We're going to have Karen look at the landscaping.
Well, okay.
We'll look at whether that's wetlands or not, because then we have a wetland permit involved, and there's a 100-foot buffer.
Well, I mean,
So that we're gonna, that's.
I mean, it can't be wetlands. I mean, it can't be. It's an open culvert that's being fed by a pond above.
So you show the upper part of it as a drainage swale, and it does say stream on the map?
It's not a stream.
That's why we want someone to go out and take a look at it, to
It's-
confirm one way or the other what it is.
Yeah, it's definitely not a stream. It's being fed from pond above. It's a swale that comes across, and it feeds the culvert going under 17M. I mean, it's a drainage swale for the lake above.
Well, I
So-
think what happened was there was a stream, and they dammed up a little area to create a pond above. So I think it probably was a stream. I don't know if that's the original location, if it was relocated. I don't know anything about that. That's why I think we want to have Dave go out there and just take a look at it, and whether or not it is or isn't regulated. I haven't seen it, so I don't know, you know. So, yeah, we'll get going on that. And appreciate your desire to, you know, obviously move the project forward.
Yes. No fault of this board, obviously, you know, without question. But it's just been a long half a year. And,
Okay.
And again, you know, if that's the intent of this board and the substance of the consultants, and I'd like to see that happen.
I just ask a question, Madam Chairman?
Yes?
So, the owner of the property, that other property that's being developed, it's a LLC from New Jersey, Mr. Santiago?
That's our owner. That's my client.
Oh, that's your client. Okay, well, I'm confusing. What's the name of the LLC that you're?
Well, his name is Dom Santiago. The LLC is 339 Route 17M LLC.
Okay, and the folks you're dealing with, trying to negotiate with?
Oh,
On the
that
other
was, they were from Muncie. That's the guy who just came in. On your plans, it's showing up on under a different name. I don't know if the ownership changed, or if your ownership is for that one small property. Let me check real here, quick. That one little area that's in the town. Okay, here we are. This property is the one that we just heard.
Executive Office LL.
In Muncie, and I think you might be showing it as, unless you're, unless, what is this one here?
Our survey was
It might-
2 years ago, I think.
Yeah,
You know,
so it probably just reflects old ownership information, yeah, so that's A&A Cycle Shop, Inc. So, yeah, this is in a different ownership now than what shows up on your plan. And then as far as and that's the stream outlet that you can see here. And that's coming in and just, this is being fed probably from a system up here. I'd have to look at more information to see the topo and what's feeding this. But I doubt that was natural. There must be something that was put there to create the bond at one point. And that Snoop Street dealt with, because that's giving access to this property back here. And so they've had to maintain that access. Yeah, so a lot going on here. So, okay, so we're gonna follow up with our consultants, and we will see whether we could maybe coordinate something. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we can try. But I think we need to look at this from a cumulative perspective, whether it's traffic, et cetera. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
You too.
You too.
Right, so. Minutes, I don't think we have any minutes at this point. Yep. So we have any more minutes besides the one that you sent me?
Another one with all,
I only have one email. I don't have any to my MPV. And then I saw, I'll take a look again. I thought I saw the one.
I did the chair, like, I worked right up until the meeting downstairs today. So I
Okay.
probably did it at like 5:30.
Oh, okay. I'll take a
Yeah,
look.
I was down there, so I sent the ones that we had back, and then we realized I hadn't finished doing the red lines for February 21st, which I have one page left.
Okay. And
that
do we
you
have
had given
March?
me. March, you had the 9th, and the 21st I'm still working on.
Okay. Okay.
So I might have them for Tuesday. I'll do my best. I have to get ZBA notices out.
Okay. All right. Again, we're trying to get these.
No, I know.
Within the 2 weeks required by the law. So, all right.
Chairman?
Anything we want to discuss?
Yes.
Okay.
I noticed we have a couple audience. that-
Sure.
Do they have business before the board, or?
I believe this is school credit.
Oh, okay.
It's the governmental program, right? So they have
Very
to.
good, okay.
They have to listen to us and try not to fall asleep. Hopefully it was interesting. Good, I'm glad. Do our alts have anything they want to, okay. And Jeff or Nick, anything you want to bring up, or,
I'm good.
okay? All right, with that, I will make the motion that we adjourn the meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.